Hey everybody, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. A few weeks ago we were watching the British Bakeoff and they did this showstopper with hand-raised pies, these savory hand-raised pies, and the contestants did a lot of really interesting and cool things. And so I got the idea that I would do a Thanksgiving dinner showstopper hand-raised pie. Now I don't have one of those really cool long narrow pie tins like they had. Those are surprisingly difficult to get, so I'm going to be using a round springform pan, but I'm going to do it where I'm going to do a layer of turkey, a layer of Thanksgiving dressing, some cranberries, Thanksgiving dinner in a slice. I think this is going to be really good. So one of the things about making a pie is you want to go ahead and make all your insides of the pie first. I've got some cranberries. When you get it, this is a 24-ounce bag. When you get them, you want to kind of sort through them, pull out any of the soft ones, get rid of them. I'm going to go ahead and slice open my orange here. I'm going to zest into the pan. All right, get all that good orange zestiness in there. All right, so I've got all the orange zest, the orange juice into the cranberries. I'm going to add to that about a cup of sugar here. Go ahead and add that in. I'll go ahead and stick this on the stove because it's going to take a while to cook, and we want to get that all congealed together. Those cranberries are going to give off a lot of moisture. It needs to cook down quite a bit. It's time for me to start getting my stuffing going. And the first thing I need to do is go and start chopping up some celery and onions and get them diced up. I've also got a pound and a half of Italian sausage from a local store here. It makes me kind of sad when I see celery in the grocery store without its leaves. This celery that I picked up happened to have just very few of the leaves in the middle. Like there's something wrong with these leaves. They're actually the tastiest part of the celery, and you should definitely chop them up and include them in whatever you're cooking with celery. I've got my pan getting hot for the celery, onion, and sausage mixture. The cranberries are bubbling away, and I'm going to start sweating that onion and celery and cooking it with the sausage so it can go in and become part of our stuffing. Checking our cranberries. They're starting to get pretty thick. You can see a little bit of caramelization on the bottom, which a little bit isn't bad. Gives it a little more complex flavor. These are getting pretty close. Go ahead and put that in the pan. I'm going to leave the grease in the pan. It's time to now sweat those vegetables. I've already put the meat and the breadcrumbs in the bowl, and it looks like a very huge amount of stuffing, and it is a large amount of stuffing, but there are two things to consider. One of them is that when you add this chicken stock, these breadcrumbs are going to mush down quite a bit and absorb a lot of that liquid. And the other thing is my wife really likes stuffing, so I'm making extra, and ideally we'll have some left over. I went out to the garden hoping that I would, get some sage out and be using fresh sage. Unfortunately, this rather paltry amount, so I'm afraid I'm going to be resorting to the sad McCormick little dry thing of sage that happens to everybody at Thanksgiving, using these old spices. Hopefully this won't be too detrimental to the overall flavor. I'm using quite a bit of salt. This sausage at this particular grocery store that I use seems to not put any salt in their sausage, so I got to make up for that. And there's a lot of bread here to season. Now I'm going to go ahead and start putting in some stock a little bit at a time. I'm going to take off my wedding ring because this is going to get gross and start mixing this up. Now this bread is super dry. It gives me anxiety when I watch cooking shows and they're mixing stuff in bowls that are too small. And this is kind of on the edge of things. You don't want your dressing to get too wet. And some of the stock has made it to the bottom of the bowl. So I'm going to be careful not to go ahead and willy-nilly add too much. This is starting to break up. You see how the breadcrumbs are starting to get wetter and mushier. Yeah, I don't think we're actually going to need any more stock. I put in about 2 pints of stock. This smells really quite good. And there we go. So we're getting to the meat part of the pie, and I'm going to use turkey breast. This has got the bones attached to it. I'm going to take the the breast meat off, and then I'm going to actually roast these bones here and use them to make a stock. I will, however, be mixing some of the turkey breast with, I bought a couple of pounds of boneless, skinless chicken thighs. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rough chop up this turkey breast, and I'm going to rough chop up the chicken thighs, and I'm going to mix those things together and add some seasonings. I've got a couple of springform pans over here, a small one and a bigger one. I'm actually going to be making two different pies with these ingredients because I'm going to be bringing them into two different classes tomorrow over at Loyola. Here I've got in a saucepan 80 milliliters of milk and 80 milliliters of water together, and I'm going to put in 150 grams of Crisco. Now, hot water crust, of course, calls for lard, and I know if you're watching this at home, you say, well, lard is better, and perhaps that's so, but neither of the two grocery stores that I went to today carried lard. And what we're going to do is we're going to melt this until it's all boiling together. All right, well, it looks like we're all melted. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the flame. Now it's time to go ahead and combine this with the flour. I'm just going to go ahead and pour this on in. And then we're going to quickly mix it in. Start working this with the spoon. The idea is to quickly combine this into a ball. So I'll go ahead and mix. Go ahead and turn this out on the surface. All right, this has come together in a ball. I'm going to go ahead and divide off a little bit of it for my top. Bench knife here. Maybe a little more than that. I'm going to take that and I'm going to wrap that in saran and hold that aside, and I'm going to roll the rest of this out. I'm going to flatten it out a little bit. Got our trusty rolling pin. So there they are, rolled out. Go ahead like so. Flip it over. And we're going to go fit this into our pan. It's just now kind of getting crumbly. I really can't handle this too much more. Hopefully I'll be able to put a top on it successfully. All right, I'm ready to fill this. I have about 50% turkey breast, 50% chicken thighs. I've gone ahead and I made up a mixture of melted butter, parsley, green onion, salt, pepper, a little microplane garlic, which makes it smell fantastic. And because this is a Louisiana operation, just a little bit of Tony Chachere's seasoning. I'll give it a little extra zing to it, not overpoweringly so. I'm going to make a layer of meat in the bottom of this pie. So I'll go ahead and layer that in. Of course, between layers, be sure to wash your hands thoroughly with soap and water and dry them so you don't cross-contaminate your poultry with your stuffing. So let's take here, we're going to take a layer of this stuffing and press it down, like so. I tasted these cranberries and they're very nice and tart, exactly what I want, something to cut through the richness. A lot of these traditional pork pies or hand-raised pies have a tart sort of chutney of some kind in them. In this case, we're going to use the cranberries, and what could be more American Thanksgiving than having some cranberry in the pie. And of course, it's hard to argue with this lovely dark cranberry red color. Doesn't that look nice? Well, I baked them for 2 hours in the oven at 350. Put a thermometer in them and they read 160 on the inside, and with the extra residual heat and baking time, that's definitely done for poultry. They look good. One thing I learned is that with the springform pan, you got to be careful to keep the top from overlapping the edge of the pan. I had a little bit of trouble getting the crusts off the top, the lift off the top. I mangled the tops a little bit. Still, they smell good. They smell very good, and they don't look bad. I'll be very interested to see what my students think of them in the morning.
Oh no.
Look at that! Look at that! Woo!
It was like a slice.
It actually worked.